Hello. Welcome to Do As We Say, Not As They Did. The only podcast that teaches you how to avoid the mistakes of the other people by pointing and laughing and then saying, here's how to do things differently. I'm your host, Harris O'Malley, also known as Dr. Nerdlove. With me, as always, is my friend and co-host. They are a writer. They are a real doctor, unlike me. They are a sex educator. They are someone who may be beamed out of here at any moment to go fight in the other realm for the fate of the world in Mortal Kombat.
It's true.
Dr. Liz Powell.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you again. And again, this is the only podcast that talks about dating and relationships. It's the only one. So we're so glad you're here. So, Harris, what are you inflicting on me today?
Since it has been handed down on high that we are not, in fact, doing the testicle maxing episode that I proposed, under the apparently unwritten and undisclosed rule of you get one, we are instead talking about the Guardian, not the Canadian character, not a DC superhero slash newsman. We are, in fact, talking about the Guardian newspaper in the UK and the article they just put out. Single women are buying more houses. The men they are dating are not responding well. Which, before we even get into this, I think this brings up the eternal question of, are men okay?
No. No, they are not. Yes. So I'm not a woman, but I date a lot of men. Contrary to what people in the comments seem to think, I do actually date a lot of men. And I have had many, many relationships where I made more money than the man I was seeing or was more financially secure than the man I was seeing. And I can testify to the fact that they do not like that. A lot of men, when you talk to them about the theoretical possibility that they could date a woman who makes more money, are like, yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be great. But then once it happens, boy, do they have feelings. And they sure do make them the problem of the person they're dating.
It has been, and I am not joking when I say this has been a perennial problem. This is something that I wrote about at this point, God help us all, over a decade ago. In fact, at this point, I need to double check, but I believe it was 13 years that I was writing about studies in toxic masculinity and masculine stereotypes, where men who were out-earned by their female partners would have a whole host of problems up to and including erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And that the level of stress that some men experienced doing things that were, for lack of a better term, female coded, which included things like braiding rope because it was too close to braiding hair, led to immense levels of psychological stress. And this is just absolutely fascinating, but let's actually dive in right off the bat. When Tiffany Tate put the wheels in motion to buy her first home, it felt like a win until a date's response stopped her cold. If you buy that house, what's a guy going to do for you, he said. It was just after their first date and just before what would be their last. Tiffany, then 29, had just ended a long-term relationship and moved from her hometown in Winston-Salem to Charlotte for a new job at a career development center. She had just joined Match.com, first mistake, and was starting to dip her toe into the Charlotte dating scene. Her date, previously promising, was clearly struggling to understand why she would want a serious relationship if she was going to buy her own home. Tiffany was thrown. I was like, I don't understand the question.
I'm with Tiffany, but like we know what he means here, right? Here's the thing. I'm sure this article is going to breathlessly be like, what do you mean? I don't know. But like, here's the thing. Men on the internet love to complain about how all women are gold digging whores who only want them for their money. But the second a woman is like, actually, I don't care about your money, they're like, but then why do you want a man? Look, bros, either it is bad that women only want your money, or that is the only way you can feel secure is if your money is going to dominate that relationship structure. You got to pick one. You only get one. If what you want is for your money to be the reason someone dates you, you don't get to bitch about people dating you for your money.
The whole thing is fascinating. We will be getting to more of it, but this is really tying into a thing that I see over and over and over again, and this is not me doing a bit, this is not me just like making stuff up. This is something I have seen come up. It has come up in my columns, it has come up in people I have worked with, it has come up in the constant discourse online of men not really knowing how to handle modern dating. And again, I am not doing a bit, I am not just like making fun of
No.
people. Like, this is a recurring thing, because what we are experiencing is a ongoing issue of not even the standards, just what people are looking for in relationships has changed over time. And a lot of people are not really fully accepting or moving on or changing with the times, and in a lot of cases getting really, really hung up on the fact that nothing has changed. And this is one of those things that I'm just finding absolutely astounding, because honestly, this all comes back to Fight Club.
I mean, it does, but
I
there's
don't I
also
don't mean I'm blaming Fight
psychological
Club.
explanations here.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah,
so
let me
give
let
your
me
Fight Club, and then I'll
yeah.
talk about the psychological.
Yeah, because this, when I say it comes back to Fight Club, I am not blaming Fight Club. What I am saying, and
No.
at some point I am going to actually write about this, and it is going to be long, is that Fight Club, and I'm again, I cannot emphasize this enough, not doing a bit, really does explain so much of what we are all living through right now, to such a degree that I don't think people truly understand how prophetic it is, because it really does come down to the thesis statement of the book of, we are all realizing that we are not getting the rewards that we were promised for being men, and they are certainly not going to be delivered in the way that we were expected. And we are all getting extremely upset about this as we're starting to realize it. And the answer that happens in Fight Club, the Project Mayhem of it all, is man even harder. And that's literally what we are seeing now. We are like every influencer, every, manosphere guy, every wannabe Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, all of these people, even Clavicular and all the rest of them, are all coming down to the same thing of, the problem is that you're not manning hard enough. You're not getting the rewards you were promised for being a man, which means that it is clearly your fault. And so the answer is to double and triple down on being a man. And if you're still not getting the responses or the answers or the relationships that you were promised, then clearly the problem is women, and the women have taken it from you.
Yeah. So let's talk about this from a psychological perspective. One of the main families of psychological theory is called systems theory. And systems theory looks at how different levels of systems interact and create patterns that are then difficult for any person within that system to change. So, like at the most minor psychological level, you as a person are a system. Your body wants to maintain homeostasis in terms of your temperature, the amount of energy you have, right? Your body is consistently monitoring what is happening within you to try to keep things relatively stable and consistent. Similarly, in a relationship with one other person, once that system has been established of how it functions, if one person starts doing something different, the system wants to maintain homeostasis and pull them back to the position they are supposed to occupy. This is why if you've been in a relationship for a while and you're trying to like readjust the like balance of labor around chores or something, it can be very, very difficult, because even if intellectually both people within that system agree to that being a good idea, the system itself helps to try to reinforce moving back to what was already established. Changing a system is very difficult, and it takes a long time, and it requires people being willing to be deeply uncomfortable while that change occurs. If we look at societal level systems, particularly around heterosexual dating, what we are seeing right now is that the women part of the heterosexual dating have a large proportion of them decided that the way the system was operating did not work for them, and they are not going to operate in that way anymore. And they are able to make those choices for a variety of reasons. Like, they can have their own bank accounts, they can go to college and get advanced degrees, they can get jobs, they can have credit cards, they can get a mortgage on their own, which is something that was not available to them 40 years ago, right? We're not talking about some mythical long distant past. We're talking about within the lifespan of people you probably know, this is all completely changed. And what that means is that now, where in the past many women would have agreed to marry a man because otherwise there was no way to achieve meaningful stability in their life in terms of their finances, their ability to live somewhere, all of these things. Now, many women are looking at the situation and saying, I want a partner. Partnership is something I would like. And I am not willing to sacrifice my personhood or my sanity in order to make that happen. I'm not willing to accept a permanent level of misery that makes my partner happy, but that extracts from me my labor, my emotional energy, my attention, my freedom. And so as a result, the men within the system are pulling back, right? And the system itself is attempting to return to homeostasis, which is why you have cultural things like the government trying to mandate people have babies and have marriages and all that shit, right? Like everything around the people making this new decision is trying to pull them back into their old roles, which is why it is becoming more extreme. The article mentions in the next paragraph that 31% of Gen Z men agree a wife should always obey her husband, which is higher than millennials. Gen Zers on the men's side are more culturally conservative than their previous generations. Up until Gen Z, ideas about these kinds of factors, like should a wife obey her husband, what should the balance of labor be in a house, have been gradually becoming more equal. But with Gen Z, it has swung back really hard. And I think that that is partly due to internet influences and all of these different things. I also think that this is how systems function, right? If you look at any major change in how civil rights are in terms of how society is structured, there is a significant component of the society that pulls back extra hard against it and becomes more the thing that is the opposite of that change. So when civil rights movement is coming up, people become more racist and argue more for racist things and engage in more racist violence because they want to return the system to homeostasis. And they think the best way to do that is to make it so painful and unmanageable for the people trying to change that they will have to come back to their old roles. And that means that what we are in for right now is a period of time of years, possibly decades, where a lot of people, particularly cishet women, are going to be choosing not to date at all or have relationships because the people available to them are not going to meet their standards. And that's going to make a lot of those men very, very angry. I don't care. I'm sorry. That sounds very callous. Let me phrase it a little bit more kindly. I don't care because this is their discomfort they need to work through, right? This is at the end of the movie Pleasantville, right? The dad comes home to his house and the wife has left because she's discovered she likes art and doesn't want to be with him anymore. The kids aren't there. And he's like, but where's my dinner? Who's going to make me dinner, right? He just can't get over the idea that everything has changed around him and he needs it to go back. That's what so many of these dudes are right now. Everything has changed. It already has changed. It is not going back. You need to figure out how to get good with that. That is not my job to handhold you to. Unless you're paying me. If you're my patient or my client, cool, I can handhold you. But if you're just a dude on the internet or a dude out there dating, not my job.
And the same thing happens right off. And again, shortly after the paragraph you just read, it was pretty jarring. Tiffany said of that date, why would me buying a house be a deterrent for a guy? Wouldn't that be a positive? He went from seeming really nice to kind of aggressive. Like, good luck finding someone as good as me when you're Miss Independent. While theories like the 666 rule have gained popularity in the manosphere, claiming that women are only interested in dating men who are 6 feet tall with six-pack abs and six-figure incomes, in actuality, many women are facing the fallout of being financially independent. Stories like Tiffany's have emerged across women's whisper networks, support groups, and on social media in recent years, as single women across the U.S. continue to surpass their male counterparts in rates of home buying. According to the National Association of Realtors' 2025 profile of home buyers and sellers, single women now make up 25% of U.S. first-time home buyers, more than twice the percentage of single men. Despite earning less than men on average, NAR's 2025 data show that single women report a greater willingness to make financial sacrifices to prioritize their home buying goals. 41% reported spending less on entertainment, vacations, clothing, and other non-essential goods, compared with the 31% of single men. And again, This ties into a lot of areas where people talk about men falling behind women in different places, especially in areas like job acquisition and college. There are more women going to college than ever before. Whereas this is where a phrase that I like, the figures don't lie, but liars can't figure, comes into play, because this gets played up as somehow, this is displacing men. But if you
Mm-mm.
actually look at the figures, what's going on is the rate of men going to college has more or less stayed the same. It's the rate of women going to college that has just gone up. And this again gets played into being somehow things are becoming worse for men. And I want to be fair here. Things are bad for men. Things are very bad for men. But a lot of the reason why things are bad for men is, I hesitate to use the word self inflicted, but it's more akin to, it is a recognize, it is a trying, like you were saying, trying to maintain a stasis, even though that stasis is actively harmful to the way that we live today, the society we have today, and the realities of just the economy on the ground. And that lack of willingness to really look around and adjust and say, okay, this isn't working. What do we do now? Is really getting to it's the origin story of so many of the things that people complain about, the legitimate beefs that people have. And it's getting it and not being willing to explore all of that and recognize that maybe things are bad for a reason and need to change is a problem.
Yeah,
It
and I think we've talked about this before, right? That like the problem men have is not women, it's capitalism. But to acknowledge that capitalism, particularly white supremacist patriarchal capitalism, is the problem would require them to question a system that, in general, gives them many benefits that it does not give to other people. And so, if they acknowledge that the capitalism is the problem, then they would risk losing some of those benefits, even though the system is hurting them. And so, they cannot acknowledge that the capitalism is the problem. So, they have to offload all of that anger and all of those, again, very understandable and totally relevant and totally correct issues onto something else that is not this thing they are unwilling to question. And so they offload it onto women. The problem is not that capitalism has created a system in which now the kind of life that was achievable for an average single person working to support a family when I was a child is unattainable for a two-parent household with only one child, right? Capitalism has made it so that almost none of us can even come close to living the kind of life that was relatively accessible, again, 40 years ago. But we can't blame the capitalism, so we have to blame the women, right? I also think that part of how the current system of biases and prejudices works is it creates in particularly cis straight white men this kind of sense of expectation that the world will give itself to you, that you'll just get what you want. And I think that there is a way in which a lot of, again, particularly cis straight white men, as soon as they start hitting any roadblocks or setbacks, just kind of give up. It's a thing that can only happen with a certain degree of privilege, right? I love math. When I was a kid, I loved math. I was on our mathletics team, right? And I continually got pushback about being a girl doing math. Continually. All of the time. The only reason I was able to succeed on that team was because I was neurodivergent enough to not care that people didn't like me for doing it. And I loved math so much that it didn't matter, actually, if it was making me unpopular with some of the people. That's fine. The math is great, right? But it was not the case that I could just be good at math and then get on the team and have an equal spot. I had to be excellent at math and willing to face social consequences in order to participate in this more traditionally masculine field, right? And so my life has been one of understanding that people are going to give me pushback and make my life harder, and that's okay, right? I just have to figure out how to get through that. And I'm a white person. So that's easier than it would be for a lot of other people. At the time, I was abled. So it was easier than it was for a lot of other people, right? I come from a relatively financially secure family. So it was easier than it was for a lot of people. And again, I have not at any point in my life been like, oh, I hit a roadblock, it must be the world's fault that I can't succeed here. Not that the story I learned about it was particularly healthy. The story I learned about it was like, I'm damaged and broken, and if I was good, then it would work easily. But I learned I have to work and I have to push. And I think a lot of privileged dudes, they start hitting initial roadblocks and they're like, this is so fucking unfair. Where's my bang maid? I don't understand.
I think I would actually say it's not even necessarily all men who are privileged under capitalism. There is a
Sure.
line that I bring up in my column a lot that is it was by it the version I quote is from Kieran Gillen in the comic Wicked and Divine, and I believe he was paraphrasing Laurie Penny, but it's that people forget that patriarchy doesn't mean rule by men, it means rule by fathers. And most men will never be allowed to become fathers, and it's one of those things that's very easy to not really be aware of when you are very much in the muck and living your own life and you're feeling very like put upon and you're having a much harder time than you were ever supposed to. It is very hard to look around and say, oh, the problem is that there are forces at work, the top level, the oligarchs, that are at this point trying to ensure a permanent underclass rather than there's something wrong with society. And rather than saying, like, okay, well, obviously the problem is women, the problem is feminism, the problem is, insert scapegoat here. And it's, again, it doesn't help that all of this gets tied into a lot of continual reinforcement of certain norms and tropes that we hear all the time. Because a big thing in this article that I just keep coming back to, and a thing that I have dealt with professionally for a very long time now, really since I got started, is the idea that men aren't quote unquote needed and don't know how to feel wanted. Because up until really, and I'm at 1974, I want to say, is when the Equal Access to Credit Act passed. Someone is going to get in the comments and give me the exact date, but it's within a 3-year variance there, I think, which was, again, the first time that women were able to get access to bank
74.
accounts, credit cards, mortgages without having someone else sign off on it for them. So again, it is within many people's lifetimes that this finally happened. It's not a long, long time ago. And even still, a lot of those norms that you would have thought in the far-flung future of 2026 have finally changed are still in effect. We still make fun of guys or refer to guys who are taking their children out to the parks or, driving them to school or taking them to after-school sports or activities or whatnot as babysitting their kids.
Which
When,
they're parenting. They're
yeah,
parenting.
they're
You're
parenting
also
their
not
kids. They're not
helping your
babysitting.
wife with the housework. You're doing housework because you're an adult who lives in a house, right? Like you're not helping your wife. It's not her task that you're being so benevolent to help with. You're an adult who lives in a house. You need to do some fucking cleaning. You had some fucking children. You need to goddamn parent. Like it's not.
But this ties into so many other things about stories and norms and tropes that get reinforced, especially the whole like men aren't wanted thing. One of the things I've dealt with as a dating coach who teaches people, mostly men, but not exclusively, how to date better is the idea that women don't like sex, that women don't want sex, that men want sex more than women do. And therefore, women control sex. And the idea that women control the quote cost of sex, when in reality, that's not the case. And you're putting it into a combative frame where now you're putting sex into a win-lose situation where it's a zero-sum game. Someone gets what they want, someone loses out. And that's precisely the issue that you're running into in examples like we were talking about in this column of guys saying like, well, what do you need me for then? It's like companionship,
Companionship, like
fun,
partnership. Like
Someone to
connection,
share experiences
intimacy?
with?
I don't understand the question. So they have a couple quotes from the chief economist from Redfin, which I don't think we need to give that person any airtime because Redfin is one of the many companies that are doing horrible things to our real estate market. I want to read this section because it's in the Bay Area. So, first of all, I get to talk about the horrors of Bay Area real estate, but also I think it's really got a lot going on. I've always wanted to have equity, especially because I'm a single Black woman. A woman whom I'll call Tanya told me. I wanted to make sure that I have something to lean on. Tanya, who wanted to be anonymous because of the backlash she experienced while pursuing her ownership goals, moved to San Francisco in 2021 to accept a faculty position at the University of California, San Francisco. Given the historic rise in Bay Area rental prices, Tonya considered home ownership an investment. She wasn't in a serious relationship, but she didn't want to wait for one to prioritize her financial future. I just wanted to make sure that there was something in my name, she said. Tanya was 36 when she closed on her condo, and before long, she experienced friction in her love life. She would go on a few dates and everything would be going well, and then they find out, said Tanya. It wasn't just that men lost interest when they found out she owned her own place. It also seemed to trigger combativeness, even hostility in them. I feel like it immediately puts men on the defensive, so they start talking about their own finances and what they're able to do. It wasn't Tanya's first time managing the discomfort her achievements elicited in prospective partners. She had already learned to downplay her successes as a professional woman working in the sciences. As soon as I tell people I'm a scientist, they shut down or they start talking about what they're doing. But she had hoped things might play out differently after being set up with someone through a mutual acquaintance. He was mature, he was in his late 40s, so in a position where there wasn't time to just play around, I felt like he was someone I could talk to. When he arrived at her condo to visit, things unfolded in a painfully familiar way. It was a nice building, and I think that really threw him off, she recalled. He was like, "Oh, the rent must be crazy here." And I was like, "No, I actually own it. I thought I told you that." The energy shifted immediately. I could feel his male ego kicking in, like, "I can provide too," Tanya remembered. She tried to reassure him, clarifying that she did not expect a man to take care of her and that she wanted to build something together, but things only escalated from there. He was just being volatile and angry over mild things, she said. When she voiced her opinion, he would call her needy or ask her point blank, "Do you want to be the husband in the relationship now?" Okay. So first of all, for anyone who does not live in the San Francisco area, you may not understand just how crazy a price she probably paid for this condo. In 2021, for a San Francisco condo in a nice building, I'll give you this bit of perspective. A friend of mine was hanging out with someone last weekend looking at condos for them. They looked at a studio condo in San Francisco, and it was over $1 million. So a nice condo in a nice building, if it's a 1 bedroom or a 2 bedroom, could easily be over $2 million. That would not be unusual, but definitely it's over one. So, like, this is not, she did not get, like, if you're in the Midwest and you're like, houses are so expensive, they're like $300,000 now. Burned out husks of homes in San Francisco sell for over $1 million. So that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah, no, Austin has had its ups and downs with the home prices as well. I remember, especially about the time when Elon was talking about moving Tesla to Texas and to Austin in particular. Dear fucking God, I watched homes because I had friends who were trying to buy watching as houses that were barely houses. These were almost literally just a bunch of termites holding hands going for 20, 30, 40% above asking cash
Yep.
offers.
Yep.
Sight unseen.
Yep.
These are scrapers that were going for over $1 million. And it wasn't
Yep.
even a case where you could argue that it's in a neighborhood, therefore the value is in the land. It's like, no, these are in bad neighborhoods where the property values are low and have been, in some cases, kept low artificially, because that's a whole different rant entirely. But these are in neighborhoods where the property values would, under a normal economy, be very low. And people are paying seven figures in some cases for houses that ultimately need to be torn down and start over. And it's gotten a little better since then, but not by much. And yeah, it's watch the fact that anybody owns property at all right now is nothing short of a goddamn miracle.
Yeah. And uh, okay, I want to read the next paragraph. For women caught in between these contradictory claims, labeled both too independent and not independent enough, heterosexual dating and relationships can start to feel futile. Boy, so the number of people, generally men, who have dated me and they're at the start of the relationship, they're like, I love how independent you are. It's so great. And then a couple months and they're like, why are you so independent? Here's the thing, a lot of people of all genders have no idea what they actually want in a relationship. And once they start to get activated by something, once something triggers their defensiveness or like their own feelings of shame or guilt or insecurity, they will just start acting out on those rather than examining, why am I so upset that this person I'm dating owns their own home? Why am I so upset that this person makes more money than me? What is it that's making me feel like that is a husband role? And is that actually something I want to keep inside of me? Right? Ugh, boy, it's bad.
Well, I can tell you exactly where it's coming from because this is a question that I answer all the time. And
Oh, yeah,
it's
I
from
know where it's
yeah,
coming from,
yeah,
but they need to ask themselves.
right, but it's one that if they stop for to think about it for a second, it will come up because a question that I deal with guys who are talking about how they're worried about their dating prospects. One of the things they talk about all the time is their shitty dead end jobs, or that they're living with their parents, or that they don't have a car, and that they are still paying off their student loans or whatnot. And the thing that comes up every single time is that I feel like I'm going to be disqualified from dating because I'm not making enough money, or because I am living with roommates, or I am living at home. And they are all sincerely worried that women are going to look at them and just think, failure to launch, or just like man child. And they are legitimately terrified that they are not measuring up, or that they are failing in some fundamental way. And I have to explain to them over and over and over again that women are not looking for a, unless they are specifically doing a type of sex work, they are not looking for a provider. They are not looking for a sugar daddy. They are looking for someone who is generally just on top of their bills, who isn't wasteful with money, who is relatively responsible, not even a high bar to clear. That, someone who isn't going to be a drag down on their finances too. When they get married, they don't want to find out that their credit score is going to take a terminal dip because the person
Yeah.
that they're marrying has, tens, or even, God help us all, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt,
Yeah.
and no way of actually maintaining or paying down that debt. A problem that becomes increasingly, valid as, school, like student debt becomes undischargeable by bankruptcy, medical debt is increasingly a thing. But yeah, what everyone's looking for is someone who's basically just like, look, I'm not looking for someone to buy me stuff. I'm not looking for a guy to, take me to fancy restaurants and take me to Dubai or around the world trips. I'm
No.
just looking for someone who generally has their shit together. But guys are keep getting told over and over again, and I need to emphasize this is 99, not always, but 99% being told by other men that
Yes.
this is what women want. In fact, the very next paragraph is about the options are small to begin with, so they tell you to be open-minded, said Tanya, citing red pill claims that women are only interested in hypergamy or dating up. But then men don't take that very well, she said, referring to her experiences dating men with comparatively fewer financial resources. They view it as you trying to emasculate them, even when you specifically say, no, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Well, and I think so. The one thing I will say to like the stuff you were talking about with the folks you work with or the who you answer questions from, to some extent, there is a grain of truth there, right? If I'm going on a date with someone in their 30s who lives with their parents, I'm going to have some questions because, like, what is happening there, right? I want to understand why that is happening because that is a little bit strange, right? If you're in your early 20s, that's super normal. But, like, there is a point where it becomes what is that about? What is happening here? You're stuck in your dead end job that you hate. Cool, but are you going to make me hold all of that negative emotion for you because we're dating? Am I going to have to listen to you complain about this job that you do not like and that you also are not actually trying to leave, that you're not actually applying to other jobs or trying to find something different, right? Are you spending your time doing a bunch of online gambling or gaming with friends rather than something that actually gives you some kind of sense of like purpose or meaning or direction in your life? It is less about the specifics of like how much money you have or how many people you're living with or who they are. Those may cause concerns, but what's going to be a rule out, like an absolute not going to date you, is all of the bitterness and entitlement and this like kind of pathetic woe is me thing that a lot of folks turn to when they feel like their situation is not what they want it to be and they're also not doing anything about it. Look, people move back in with their parents, right? I have a good friend and they live with their partner in his parents' house. And part of that is to help take care of those parents as they're aging. Part of that is that it's a beautiful house and then they don't have to pay much in terms of expenses and they can save up for their own fertility journey, right? Like there's a lot of reasons for it. If I like met him on the internet and he was like, yeah, we live with my parents, I'd be like, ooh, why? But then I understand the situation and it's not a rule, like it's not absolutely disqualifying. But if he came like, well, like, yeah, I live with my parents, but because like I can't do anything, man, like this job, I'm stuck in it, and like there's just nothing else, and I've just stopped even applying because like why would I bother? Oof, oof, duh, oof, right? Like that's what I have the issue with. The issue that I have is not living with your parents. The issue I have is that your bitterness and frustration and entitlement are preventing you from being able to engage with the world in a way that has any happiness or joy, and also preventing you from doing anything to change the circumstance making you miserable.
And to be perfectly fair, there are a lot of forces at work right now that are getting in
Yes,
the way of being able to find those jobs. There was a recent
totally.
article in Wired about a guy trying to get a residency in hospitals where he had amazing grades. He had incredible references from his professors in medical school and could not get a residency anywhere. And as it turns out, a big part of that is because of all of the hospitals that were using AI for staffing, that were just rejecting everyone for all sorts
Yeah.
of different reasons. So yeah, there are, again, we're getting back into the problem was capitalism all
Yes.
along, which is
And
a
again,
big part of it.
I what I was saying was not you need to change your job. What I was saying is like if you are miserable, are you doing something about it? Even if that
Right.
thing is just going to therapy so I don't have to be your dumping ground for all of your misery, right? Like that's not what a partner's for. And I feel like this is also a piece of like what a relationship is that a lot of cis straight men are having trouble letting go of the old paradigm. Because in the old paradigm, your wife or your girlfriend was your therapist and your chef and your babysitter and your house cleaner, right? That is not the paradigm anymore. A lot of women who date men do not want to have to be the person who is their emotional dumping ground because that fucking sucks, right? Like, if you need to vent to me about something, that's fine. You can come and vent to me about it. If you vent to me about the exact same thing more than like 4 or 5 times, I'm done. That's really fucking tiring. And I need to understand why we're still having the same conversation and nothing has changed. Take that to a priest, take that to a therapist, take that to a coach, take that to your friends, right? Like, it is not my job to be the repository for all of your challenging feelings. You need to figure out how to deal with those.
And a lot of this is a lot of it really does come back to the same recurring issues, because it's very much a case of like these are things that we have been taught, like men have been taught all of our life, to the point that it is just we aren't aware of how much is getting reinforced and how visibly it's getting reinforced in all sorts of ways. And sometimes it's fascinating seeing it crop up when you're looking for it, because sometimes it'll just come out of nowhere like a goddamn flashbang. So to give what seems this is going to seem like a weird tangent, but stick with me for a second. A couple of weeks ago, I was having a movie night with my wife, and we were watching a Tom Cruise movie, Cocktail, came out in mid
Oh,
'80s.
Yeah, old school.
Fascinating movie that I don't think the
I
people
haven't
making
watched
it
it in
understood what they
ages.
were. This is a movie, and we may have to do this as like a bonus episode at some point to talk about it, because this is
Yeah.
a movie that I think people truly did not understand what they were making. It was almost a really complex, really interesting story by accident. But
Oh,
there
I'm
is a
sure.
point where Tom Cruise has hooked up with a very, very driven businesswoman and is now a kept man. And in the semiotics of the story, it is very clear that he is being emasculated in this relationship. And it is never said so outright, but everything about the relationship he has with her is all about her basically treating him like a pampered pet, not as a partner. And the underlying message of it is, isn't this awful for this guy who was going to be a champion of capitalism, a thing he calls himself in the movie? I am not just extrapolating that.
No, stop it. No, no. Oh my God, we have to
But
watch this and talk about it.
isn't this like the most horrifying thing that could possibly happen? It is amazing to see that in a movie that came out when I was alive, and to watch it go like, this is something people still picture. This is a thing that people are still afraid of.
Well, and
It's amazing.
yeah, so the article gets to this in the next few paragraphs that we can read, but the reason for this, so here's the thing. If you feel like you are being lessened by being placed into the role you assume a woman would assume, it's because you think women are lesser than. It's because you think you are better than a woman. Because otherwise, why would it matter that you're being put into what you see as the woman role? Why does it matter? It's because you think women are less than, right? That's a thing for you to explore. Do you want to read this next little section?
For men, however, women's home ownership may be signaling something else entirely. My research suggests men can experience more psychological distress when they feel they are deviating from the breadwinner role, said Dr. Joanna Serta, an economist whose 2019 paper found that men's stress levels rise when their wives earn more than 40% of the household income. So the issue may be less home ownership itself than what it symbolizes, she added. Men in couples where women earned more money at the start of the marriage did not report heightened levels of stress. This means that these responses are unlikely to be universal. Some men are quite comfortable with a higher earning or more financially established female partner than what is known from the outset, she said. Yet in Tanya and Tiffany's stories, the revelation came early on. I asked why Joel Wong, a counseling psychology professor at Indiana University who studies the psychology of men and masculinities, what might be driving men's responses to single women's growing independence. One core feature of masculinities that can lead to problems is a fear or avoidance of femininity, he said. Some research has found that men feel an urge to restore their manhood when they feel they may be identified with stereotypical femininity. So if women are more successful economically, it's almost like I've lost a little bit of my manhood. A
Yeah.
growing body of data shows that men engage in higher rates of infidelity and emotional and physical abuse when outpaced by female partners in traditional markers of wealth and status, such as income.
Yeah, research has also shown that when women earn more than their male partners, they do more housework and more childcare than when they earn less. It is just all downsides for being in het marriages for women a lot of the time. Yeah, there are so many books and sources that talk about this, but we've talked before about the man box, right? Which is a theory from God, what is his name? I'll look it up. The idea is that the man box is like the set of restrictions that you must fall within in order to still be considered a man. And it is very small and constrictive. It is something that does not have space for much deviation. And it is one that is policed very aggressively by other men, but also to some extent by people of other genders as well, right? And because of how it functions, there is the people within the man box who get to be men, and then there is everybody outside of it who are all the either failed men or marginalized genders of whatever sort, right? And so there is this feeling of you lose something if you fall out of the man box. If you are not fulfilling the ideas you have internalized make you a man, or that those around you would think make you less of a man, then you have to do something to regain your status within that structure. And again, the problem is not that your wife earns more. The problem is that the structure of patriarchy so strongly polices who gets access to manhood and the ways in which that is policed and the ways in which you are punished for falling outside of it.
And just as a slight aside, if you remember last week and you were asking me what the definition of irony was, one of the first things that comes up when you Google the man box is the ultimate gift for any man, men's essentials, lifestyles, tech gadgets, and survival items.
Jesus Christ. Great.
Like, yeah, it's
cool.
SEO. It's an amazing thing.
Cool.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right about it, about the man box and how very narrow and restrictive it is, and how ultimately, like, this is one of the things that is a perpetual thorn in my side in doing the job that I do, is trying to explain that how much of these expectations are not only self-imposed, but how many of them are not helpful, like they are harmful, and that trying to live up to them, ones that are designed literally to be next to impossible, are like, it is causing insane amounts of psychic and psychological harm. And yet when you point that out, people will agree. Like, if you talk to, and you shouldn't do this because they're not doing it in good faith, but if you try to have a good faith conversation with a lot of like red pill bros about like the problems that men have, they are not wrong in that men have a lot of problems. Men are more likely to go to jail. Men are more likely to die of suicide. Men are less likely to get mental help for mental health problems. Men are more likely to die of healthcare related issues because they don't go to the doctor as often. But when you point out that a lot of the reason for that is because men are shamed by other men for going and seeking out the solutions for this, when you point out that the people who are enforcing these roles are predominantly other men and shaming men for not living up to these other roles, that's when they start to push back hard, because they don't want to admit that this is the problem, that the issue is that they are following a set of rules where it is quite literally designed for you to fail. Because if it was easy for you to maintain your masculinity and your manhood, then the way that it's enforced on other men, and this is a big thing, is that manhood is a thing that can be taken from you, not just that you can lose, but can be taken from you by other men. That is an important enforcement mechanism that is built into the concepts, that if you do these things, you're less of a man. And if your wife makes more money than you, or your female partner makes more money than you, that makes you less of a man. But more importantly, if other people find out about it, they now have an almost obligation to correct you for it, to punish you until you fix the problem. And spoiler alert, even if you ever fix the problem, you're not going to be welcomed into the society of man. You're going to be always the person who in their past was, and pardon the phrase here, somebody else's bitch. That is a stain that they will never let you get away from, because again, the whole thing about the man box is the hierarchy of it, and that there has to be a hierarchy, and that this hierarchy has to be enforced. And if the hierarchy is not enforced, then it all goes to chaos.
Yeah. And so I looked it up. The people who created the man box theory were Paul Kivel and the Oakland Men's Project. And it was created in the 1980s, which shows you how little has changed about what it is to be a man. In 40 years, it is the same set of things. And it was further developed by Tony Porter and his organization, A Call to Men. Mark Green talks about the man box. An article about like what the components of it, right? The man box has 7 pillars in the thinking about it. The first one is self-sufficiency. So don't talk about your problems, figure things out on your own without asking for help. The second one is acting tough. So like you have to fight back. You have to act strong no matter what you're feeling. The third is physical attractiveness. You have to look attractive, but you can't put too much work into it because that's some gay shit. The fourth one, rigid masculine gender roles. So you don't cook, you don't clean, you don't take care of kids, you don't like have emotional intelligence. That's some girl shit. 5 is heterosexuality and homophobia. You have to be not just straight, but aggressively anti-gay. And that also means you can't be super close with your friends if you're straight, because then that starts to be gay. 6 is hypersexuality. You should always want it. Always. Right? Mm-hmm. This is one of the reasons that a lot of men who have been sexually assaulted have difficulty naming that that is what happened or conceptualizing what happened to them, because To some extent, they feel like, well, I should want it. Like that's just what like they offered me. I should want it, right? And then 7 is aggression and control, which is you use violence to get respect if you have to. You should always have the final say about decisions in a relationship. If you have a girlfriend or a wife, you should be able to know where she is all the time because like you get to control her. She's yours. She belongs to you. She's your property. And if
Yeah.
you look at this against modern dating, right, and what straight women are looking for, they do not want a man who doesn't talk about their problems. I'm doing a fair amount of couples therapy right now at my day job. And one of the big complaints that many of the women have about their male partners, is that they don't talk to them about anything. It's almost impossible to get them to open up about what they're thinking or how they're feeling. And that creates a huge distance in the relationship. It impacts their ability to feel intimate. Acting tough, also a big problem in relationships. Most straight women or women who are dating cishet men don't want a dude who always acts tough. They want a dude who can acknowledge when he's feeling afraid, who can have an approach to things that is not fight first, right? Physical attractiveness. We've talked about this so many times. Attractiveness is not one thing. There's not one way to be attractive. And putting more effort into your appearance is not gay if what you want to do is fuck women with it. If you're getting hot to fuck women, by definition, it's not gay. For the rigid masculine gender roles, most women in the dating community these days, and people who date like cis straight men, they don't want a partner who refuses to clean their fucking house or do the dishes or cook some food or take care of kids. And if that is the arrangement a dude wants, they are out. They are a hard no to that. They would rather be single.
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just want to circle back to what you said about how long we've been dealing with this, because like how the man box was coined in the 80s. There is a thread on, well, threads. It's probably been reposted elsewhere as well, but this is where the first one that comes up for it by user. It's Paulisci, Paulisci, called A Brief History of Men Are Becoming Less Manly, where he is posting articles
hundreds of years
complaining about how unmasculine modern men are. First one he posts is from 2009. Are men less manly today than they used to be? How? 1996, 1984. He's got one from 1913 that's the title. The headline is Civilization Rather Than Suffrage That's to Blame. Trouble is not that women are growing less feminine, but men are less masculine. There's 18. It stops at 1893, but this is a complaint that has been with us for even longer. Yeah. There are some really excellent episodes of Behind the Bastards that talk about things like the guy who was basically the first fitness influencer and how he was ground zero for a lot of this stuff. The idea of quote unquote, and this is a real term, I'm not making this up, muscular Christianity has been a term that has been with us since the 1800s that started
getting yoked for God. You know who was real strong? I knew a carpenter back in the day. He could haul some real wood. He was a man.
This was a concept that came up because they were getting really upset at how like less masculine men were because more people were living in the cities, and they were worried that this meant and this was happening in London, and they were worried that this meant that fewer men were going to be fighting for the empire. So the idea of muscular Christianity and becoming more masculine, more aggressive was all about making sure that men were willing to join the army to, and I shit you not, go fight. Has been with us, and this complaint has been with us for forever. And it, again, is very much about the hierarchy and about the maintaining the hierarchy.
Yeah. So to go to the last 3 pillars of the man box, right? Heterosexuality and homophobia. There are some women who date men who are fine with dudes who are homophobic, but that is not the majority cultural opinion these days. And if you as a dude are real weird about friendships with other dudes, interactions with other dudes, a lot of women are not going to want to date you because that weirds them out, right? They probably have gay friends. They don't want you to be fucking weird around their gay friends. Hypersexuality. Okay. My personal experience of this expectation for men is that I tend to have a much higher level of desire than most people I date across the board, regardless of gender. And that has made some of the men I have dated very weird because the fact that I want sex more often than they do somehow it challenges their manness. And so it can get real fucking weird what that ends up looking like in our relationships. But on the flip side of this, the way that this shows up in dating culture right now is dudes being really gross about sex very early on, and in a way that women don't want to put up with, right? And then the last one, aggression and control. This is a big part of why a whole lot of women, particularly Gen Z women, are opting out of dating. They want nothing to do with this. They don't want to be controlled, right? They have no desire to go back to an era where they couldn't make their own choices and they couldn't just go see their friends because they felt like it, and they can't go on a trip. They can't have friends who are guys, right? Like, they don't want to fucking go back there. And the more that men lean into these 7 pillars to reinforce their masculinity, the farther they are going to drive themselves from potential dateability. Because this is the opposite, in many ways, of what most straight women want in a partner.
Yeah, it's something that comes up in a lot of places too. Like, there in Korea, there's the 4B movement that has driven a lot of people
Yes.
like batshit insane that this is happening, where B's, or the quote 4 no's, because it comes from the 4 tenets starting with the term B, which means no. So no sex with men, no giving birth, no dating men, no marriage with men. And the
Yeah. So
reason
here's the
behind
thing.
all of it is because it's such a bad deal for them.
Yeah. So 4Bs is great, right? And they're standing on the shoulders of political lesbianism from the 60s and 70s, right? One of the wings of radical feminism in the 60s and 70s was political lesbianism, wherein straight women would determine that they were going to just be lesbian instead so that they didn't have to date or marry men. Did that go well? No, because like a lot of political lesbians and a lot of 4Bers today, unfortunately, are like grossed out by the idea of actually being attracted to women, but they're dating them anyway, which is fucking weird. Like, that's a weird thing to inflict on actual queer women. But, you know, again, this is not a new idea. This is 60 years old. The idea that you just give up men and go to women instead, right? All
Or
right, that's
just
the
give up
article.
full stop. But
Yeah, no.
yeah,
I'm not dating. I have not really been dating for the last, gosh, I'd say at least 8 months. And every once in a while, I'm like, should I try to date again? And then I'm like, no, no, I don't want to, because I date people of a variety of genders and sexual orientations, but just on a numbers basis, the majority of available people for me to date are men. And they are not sending their best. Even in relatively good, forward thinking, leftist, sex positive communities, a lot of times they are not sending their best. And I have enough on my plate. I'd rather do this podcast than try to figure out how to date again.
yeah, and
Harris,
we can
you're
get.
my boyfriend in spirit.
Hmm. Ah, but there, and we can, like, to be honest, this is another area where capitalism is fucking everything, because
So much.
especially yesterday, I went into a very long rant on Blue Sky, and I will do that. I will probably be writing this up for my newsletter, and then eventually getting back into doing video on my personal YouTube channel about AI, about Bumble moving to AI from swiping. And one of the reasons, the single biggest
Oh
reason
god,
why
it's so
online dating
horrifying.
sucks right now is because of capitalism. It is because of
Yeah.
shareholder supremacy. And if it seems like we are bouncing all over the place in today's episode because of, veering off of the article we were discussing, it's because this is all of a piece.
Yeah.
Um, and like the drive to monetize dating apps is precisely why they suck. And it's not because they're
Because
trying to
then
keep
the
you
goal
single.
is not to help you meet someone. The goal is to keep you there as much as possible,
Well, that's
right? The
it's
goal
it's
is,
not even necessarily that. It's because eventually they'll just quit using the app. The goal is to get you frustrated so that you will pay to be less frustrated. And then once they've milked as much money out of you as they can, then they move on to the next whale. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for whales. They're looking for the people who are going to do most of the buying all of the roses, buying all of the boosts to make up for all the people who don't convert. And that is another symptom of the same problem of capitalism getting in the way of literally everything that we do.
right.
And a lot of it, and this was Bumble doing this. Bumble, which was supposed to be, making dating better for women by making women in charge of it. And now they're taking women out of it entirely by having AI matchmakers decide for you.
Which is going to be horrifying. It's just going to be horrifying. Should we come back to the article?
Yeah. Dr. Jenny Young is a professor of rhetoric who popularized the burned haystack method, being for online dating, which consists of analyzing how men communicate on dating apps. Young feels that this is connected to how people view gender roles. Many women seek partnership with men still unwilling to trade in the traditional provider identity to meet them there. It's interesting because the same gender group that is constantly complaining about how women are gold diggers who exploit them for labor and money, it turns out that even they, men, can't think of what they bring to the table other than money. It was as recently as 1974, there it is, that the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed in the US, making it illegal for lenders to discriminate against credit applications on the basis of protected characteristics like sex and marital status.
Which
Many of
they
the single
still
women,
do.
true.
Like having bought a house as a single at that point woman, they don't do it explicitly. You just get a lot of questions. You just get a
And
lot of questions.
this is true about so many things. Women who want to get any sort of like permanent birth control, like
Oh yeah, no, you
get
can't.
have a
You
problem getting
can't.
doctors to take them seriously, whereas men will go in and they'll be like, "Cool, how's Tuesday?"
Yep.
Yeah, many of the single women taking out mortgages today were raised by women who couldn't do the same. When women couldn't have their own bank accounts, earn meaningful amounts of their own money, or obtain credit in their own name, they were largely dependent on men for access to money, property, and personal financial security. You took on a certain amount of risk and even trauma from men in order to be provided for, said Young. We've been living in a world whose social, political, and economic mechanisms have been dependent on women's willingness to self sacrifice, Young said. But now that women can claim their own piece of the American dream without having to make the same trade offs as their predecessors, a lot of men really don't know what to do, she said.
And one of my biggest rants in dating in general is when people want to feel needed in a relationship, because to them that feels like security, right? If my partner needs me, they will never leave. The problem with a model in which we are focusing on being needed by a partner is that it creates necessarily a power imbalance that over time will chafe at everybody involved. If I have to be in this one up role of being needed, then my partner is going to resent me for the fact that they need me. And I'm going to resent all the ways in which they cannot be self sufficient. It does not work over time. Just from a purely, like, not even getting into how shitty that is just in general, but like, even from a purely functional perspective, it does not work, right? Because almost nobody is comfortable with that kind of a power structure that continues indefinitely. In BDSM, the reason power structures work well is because they are explicitly negotiated and agreed upon, and they are pretend. They're not real. You can decide at any point to stop it. That is why they work, right? When you need to feel needed by a partner, what you are saying is you need a sense of control over them, because that is what needing means, right? Like, I need air to breathe. If you take air from me, I cannot survive. That is a powerful thing, right? If I need you in order to be able to have a place to live, I am not going to set my boundaries as strongly. I'm not going to talk about the things you're doing that piss me off. I'm going to be far more cautious about how I interact with you, because upsetting you has an enormous cost. That is not a healthy relationship.
And the motivations that women would have for buying their own property and having their own place to live, beyond basic finance, like having, building equity in your home and being able to borrow against that equity, is also things like when you are in that situation that you were describing, where your partner, you need your partner rather than you want to be with your partner, leaves you in a dire situation, which is a thing that is actually, ironically enough, coming up a lot with the Tradwife movement,
Yeah.
which plays very firmly into the idea that, oh, women are happier as Tradwives, men will cherish them, take care of everything. There was very recently a famous influencer who gave up everything to become a Tradwife, and then discovered that her husband having control of all of her money and all access to the outside world meant that she was stuck. That once he
Yeah.
started treating her badly, she couldn't leave. And when she did leave, she left with literally nothing. She had no means of support, no savings, no nothing. And so she was really having to start from zero all over again, which is precisely part of the problem. And I believe I don't know if they go into it in this article, but someone has said, like, when you're married to someone who owns your home, owns the home you're in, they can evict you. and
Yeah, so they
you'll
talk
be
about that
homeless.
here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So the
Yeah,
so the next section, I
very the
think
next
it
section
speaks to
even.
values more so than anything else. And Diana Pegoraro, an attorney who bought her condo in the Toronto waterfront back in 2020. Having housing stability wasn't part of my childhood, she said. She saved up a down payment as soon as she paid off the last of her law school loans. For the most part, the men she has dated haven't owned homes, but she doesn't see it as a downside. Even so, her condo has become a point of conflict in most of her relationships. In multiple cases, I've been dating a man who can afford to own his own condo but rents, and has asked me to move in with him as opposed to moving into my own condo, and that's become a major sticking point, she said. Fairweather, Redfin's chief economist, suggested that for many men, living under a woman's roof goes too far against historical social norms. Then she would become their landlord, right? And the landlord has power over you. They can evict you. Diana said she made many efforts to be flexible and open minded to her partner's preferences. She got rid of furniture to make space for their things, and with one partner, she did actually rent out her place to move into his. But she repeatedly found herself in a pattern of one way compromise. The men's wishes shaped the way she lived, and she rarely received the same consideration or sacrifice. Now in her mid 30s, Diana is less accommodating. My home has become a key aspect of my identity, she said. It's where I host. It's become a center for my friend group to gather. She now sees negativity around her condo ownership as an early red flag.
As well, she should. Uh,
I
yeah.
will say, as a couples therapist, if you have people who are moving in together and one of them owns a home and the other does not, moving that person into the owned home is actually really fucking sticky from a power dynamics and establishing any, like, in general, I think moving in should happen to a neutral third place, not into either person's established place. The reason being, when you move into someone else's established place, there's a huge power dynamic that happens even if you try not to, because they've already been living there. They've got it set up the way they want. They have their things the places they want them to be. In order for you to set it up equitably requires a huge overhaul on the part of the person already living there, right? And if one of them owns it and the other does not, again, big power imbalance. This is not to say it can never happen. I think that of the many ways I have seen this happen, the ways that it happens the healthiest and the most smoothly is when everybody moves into a neutral third place that neither of them has been living. But again, I think particularly if you are a woman dating a cis straight man and he moves into your place, I am not surprised that compromise was only one direction. Even if you're moving into his place, I am not surprised that compromise was only one direction. My experience of moving into places that men have already been living is that they believe they are compromising far more than they are, right? Like, they moved a picture on the wall. Why do I expect more? Right? Like, there's this very strange way that they determine how many things they are willing to change. And beyond that, I need to suck it up and deal with it. And that is rough. It's real rough.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you're not necessarily aware that you're even doing it. It just like it is just a thing that hits you, and it feels like, wait, I've already done a lot. Why,
Yeah.
why am I being asked to get rid of this thing? It shows up, and of all things, when Harry met fucking Sally,
Oh,
when
yeah.
when two of Harry's friends are moving in together and they're
That
fighting
fucking
over the
table.
college age wagon wheel coffee table.
Wagon wheel coffee table.
And
Oh,
he's
God.
complaining that she's asking him to get rid of it. And even Harry's like, I hate that stupid thing. It's dumb. He's like, why would you say that? Why didn't you say I should keep it? I was being nice. It's amazing how long this is, like, we have lived with all of this and never really questioned any of it. And
Mm-hmm.
even people who aren't aware of it still fall into the trap. This isn't a thing that, like, it's a very
No,
calculated thing. It is
no.
very instinctual, and it
Yeah.
is
And
very
again, it happens
emotional.
in all genders. I've
Yeah.
had partners move in with me into a place that I had been living in and done the exact same thing where I'm like, why do you want me to change all this shit? It's great. What is your
Mhm.
problem? And like, that's the problem with moving into someone's established place. They are rooted. They have established where things go, how they do things, what their routine looks like. And it's hard to let go of that, even if intellectually you want to, even if in terms of your values, you value creating equitable space. Deeply on a subconscious level, that's your fucking cave. What are they doing?
Okay, if a thing that this gets me into trouble occasionally when I talk about this, for a lot of reasons, but to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of couples would be a lot happier if they didn't live together, if
Yes,
they
fully agree.
continued
I'm
to
so
live
on board.
separately.
Get 2 apartments in the same building, get a duplex, right?
Yes,
Have
side by
your own
side.
living space, right? Like, I just live a block away from each other, so it's easy to walk to each other's places. At the very least, have separate bedrooms, because each of you needs a space that is yours, that you get to dictate everything that happens in it. That's not a compromise space. And again, maybe I am too independent for my own good, and that's why I believe this so strongly. But I see in so many couples I work with this feeling that like nobody has a space that is theirs, or like one partner has a space that's theirs and the other person doesn't get one. A lot of times this is an office or a game room or a man cave or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But like that feeling of not having a space of your own where you get to dictate how it is causes huge problems. And a lot of couples also run into huge problems around what does it count for you to be doing the chores?
Mhm.
What is the amount of cleaning that is acceptable? What is the amount of cleaning that is expected? Very often, couples come into that with completely different ideas, and then it is a tug of war over whose idea is going to be met, and nobody's actually fucking happy, right? The person who wants it cleaner is not happy because it's not as clean as they want it to be. The person who doesn't care as much is not happy because they feel like they're constantly getting harangued about doing more cleaning, right? Live fucking separately. Just live separately. Do it. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. You can do that. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm increasingly it is hard to do. Like, it is understandable you want to live together because suddenly half the rent or half only paying half the mortgage,
Sure.
amazing.
Totally get that.
But at the same time, being able to have your space, their space, and being able to have, maybe a third space where the two of you come together, that makes it so much easier. And then not also just little things like incompatibilities like sleeping. If
Yeah.
you are a night owl and your partner isn't, and you have to creep around like a cat to make sure that you're not waking them up because you can't go, you physically cannot fall asleep before 4 a.m. They have to, like, they work the early shift or whatnot. Yeah, that can be really stressful all around. But having your own place where you can not have to worry about the noise levels quite as much, where you can have your like sense of control and sense of autonomy, and they can have their sense of control and autonomy and make it work to how it works for them. That is huge. That is really, really big for people's like ongoing satisfaction in their relationship, because then it doesn't feel like it feels more like a compromise rather than giving something up.
Yeah. And I feel like it's this the relationship escalator has told us that your relationship is a failure if you don't live together. And so a lot of people force themselves to live together despite hating it. You don't have to. It again, capitalism is a problem here. A lot of people move in because capitalism, because then they can split the costs. It's easier for them. Totally get that.
Yep.
The answer is for all of us to end capitalism. What if we ended capitalism? There's so
There's
many
a
things that would be better if we
there's
just ended capitalism.
Now, the last section here is important because, especially because it gets to a thing it gets to at the very end that I have said many times. Los Angeles-based realtor Angela Johnson has seen a growing number of single women among prospective homebuyers. Rather than being like, "Yeah, I didn't find anybody," or "I had to," or "It's my only option," we're seeing a lot of women who are excited by the idea of buying their own. She said they're psyched about it. Looking back on her own home ownership journey, Tiffany, now 40, is proud of it. "I have been able to experience freedom and joy and fun and cool stuff with my kid that statistically on paper I should not have been able to do," she said, referencing the barriers that kept most first generation college students, single mothers, and Black women like herself from accessing the same opportunities. She's also learned to spot the early warning signs. Sometimes on dating apps, men will have their profile little comments about what they're not looking for, like, "Don't swipe if you're an independent woman or if you're not feminine." Even in early conversations, she's learned to be wary when men address her with preconceived notions about their level in relationship to you, like, "Hey, big money," or "boss lady," she said. She recently deleted all her dating apps after coming to the conclusion that her time and energy is best spent elsewhere. "Where's the pool of men that are self sufficient and like to read, are willing to go to therapy, and are not afraid of a woman who has a passport?" That sounds really wild to say out loud, but I don't feel like I'm missing a ton by choosing to read a book instead of swiping on Hinge.
Preach, preach,
And
Preach.
this is a thing that I've been saying over and over again for guys trying to meet women, especially on the dating apps. You're not competing with other men. You're competing with Netflix. You're
You're
competing with
competing with
Dungeon
Dave
Crawler
the Diver.
Carl. You're
Have you
competing
played
with A
Dave the
Night at
Diver?
Home.
Have you played Dave the Diver? It's amazing. You get to play Cook Serve Delicious, and you get to play Balatro, and you get to play all, like, it's so many games in one game. Why would I go dating when I could just play Dave the Diver? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is such a multi-phase, multi-issue problem that really just it's fascinating how much it becomes turtles all the way down once you really kind of look at it. It's
and I want to read that last paragraph again, right? Of like,
Mhm.
where is the pool of men who are self-sufficient and like to read, are willing to go to therapy, and are not afraid of a woman who has a passport? And like, here's the thing. That should not be a high bar. Like, this should not be a high bar. It shouldn't. Maybe they'll like to read. We can go back and forth on like different ways of consuming media, right? But like, why is this so hard to find? And if dudes are upset no one wants to date them, maybe they should do more reading and go to therapy. Just a thought.
But I think, yeah. With that, I think we have kind of beaten this topic into the ground yet again. And so I think it's time to get into the closing business. Where can people find you online, Dr. Liz?
My website is drlizpowell.com. I am wearing one of my very cute pieces of merch. It says, I'm not gay as in happy. I'm queer as in fuck you. You too can get that on a shirt or a mug or whatever the fuck you want at drlizpowell.com/shop. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/drliz, and I'm on all the social medias as at Dr. Liz Powell, though mostly on Blue Sky. And Harris, where can people find you?
You can find me at drnerdlove.com. That is my site. If you have dating advice questions or need help, becoming more self-sufficient, meeting the people who are looking for a man who's willing to read and go to therapy, you can send in your questions at drnerdlove.com/contact. You can support the site at patreon.com/drnerdlove. And much like Dr. Liz, you can find me on all the socials at drnerdlove. And so we are going to leave it here and leave you with our traditional reminder to do as we
Do
say.
as we say. Not as they did.
We'll get this right one day, guys. I
One
promise.
day. Look, it's going to be an ongoing thing. We're good.
The day may come when we will actually be professionals about this. But today is not that day.
That's what you get with 2 chaos goblins. That's all I'm saying.